Everyone, it's Dr. Marco. Welcome to this week's health tip. So this is a follow-up to last week's health tip about we don't really usually catch a flu. We're not usually catching things. It's usually an expression of the body trying to eliminate toxins often. But people say, but my doctor checked and I have a bacterial infection. I got bacteria, they've checked it, they've swabbed it. Well, just like the trees, you know how the metaphor last week was the trees lose their leaves and the trees are not getting sick. But all those leaves that come off, they all land on the ground, and there's thousands and thousands of leaves, pounds and hundreds of thousands of pounds of leaves all over the ground. Where do they all go? Well, what happens is the leaves themselves, over the course of the year, they have bacteria, they have parasites and fungi and all sorts of stuff that are on them. But while they're on the leaves in the tree, they're just hanging out there, not really doing anything. And that's actually the case in your body too. You might be surprised to know this, but you have about 1 billion bacteria per square inch of your skin. Any part of your body, there's about 1 billion bacteria there. So if all the bacteria were making us sick, we'd be sick all the time. And if the germs were really causing us to be sick, there wouldn't be anybody here to talk about the story. So the bacteria, the fungi, and the worms, or the parasites, that's what actually decompose the leaves. But you have to understand the leaves actually have those on them before they fall. There's a lot on the ground as well, but a lot of the bacteria is already present, a lot of the fungi is already present on the leaves. It's just that when they die, the tissue starts to get weak and decompose, and then the bacteria, their job is to recycle tissues. So that's what happens in your body too. When you're breaking down the membranes and all the cells are starting to die off, a lot of it you're horking up and spitting out, but a lot of the other stuff is actually getting processed by bacteria. So they're actually breaking down the cells that are dying in your body and they're regenerating them. Some of that stuff you actually swallow. A lot of people actually, you're not spitting out your spit and blowing it out of your nose all the time. A lot of people actually swallow it. So what happens is a lot of that might be peptides or pieces or parts of cells broken down, and then it gets into your stomach. Your stomach acid will break it down completely into amino acids. You'll reabsorb it, and your body can use those again to make new cells. So that's how that whole process. It's all a recycling process. So the bacteria, the fungi, and even the worms or the parasites, they're there to break down dead or dying tissue, and the tissue gets weak first before that happens. They actually don't cause it to have the problem usually. So even in our body we have like parasites. There's probably there's like, I don't know, a few hundred different species of parasites and protozoa and all sorts of like things that would hypothetically make us sick all the time, but they're just kind of hanging out there, and there's a harmony and a balance between all these things inside the body. But when the body gets poisoned or toxins or has a toxin overload and cells start to break down and get weak, then they have something to eat and then they'll multiply. Because if you have a wound and you put leeches on it, the leeches will actually multiply in the larvae and they'll start to create a whole pile of things, and it'll look really gross, but they'll start eating up all the dead tissue. But then they don't keep eating your whole body and kill you. What happens is when your body starts to heal the wound and the cells start to become healthy, all those larvae and stuff, they'll all start dying because they don't have a food source anymore. You have healthy cells there, but that's not a food source for them. Just broken down dying cells are what the food source are. So that's what happens to your body too. So that's where all the leaves go. They get sort of recycled through nature by the bacteria that were already on the leaves and the fungi that were already on the leaves, and now that the leaves start to die because they've lost their nutrient source. Just like in your body, if the cells get poisoned and they got to detoxify, you get the fever, the cells start breaking down the water, the membranes break open, and then all of a sudden they have a source, and then they start eating it to regenerate and recycle the tissues. So there's always that harmony all the time inside our body. The harmony and the balance of the tissues is what's the important thing. We get sick when we get overburdened with poisons, and there's poisons in the environment, poisons in our food, and there's all sorts of toxins and toxicants all over the place affecting our body and our lives, and we have to get rid of that periodically. So if you're not sweating it out, peeing it out, pooping it out regularly, it might accumulate in your tissues, and your body might say, okay, change of season, there's a little less vitamin D, there's a humidity difference, let's change the lining of the cells in our stomach and let's get rid of all these toxins so we can have new cells lining the stomach that'll be ready for the environment in the winter. So that's why you might not necessarily get sick from a bug. The bugs are just there after you got sick. So that's your health tip for this week. Hopefully that's going to make you think a little bit, and we'll see you next time. Bye.